Subscribe to this YouTube channel and never miss another episode of the Mindset Playground. And follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Can't wait to see you there. Hey everyone, welcome to the Mindset Playground, where you're going to get your daily dose of positivity. And I'm your host, Luann Hunt. And I'm so glad that you've joined me today on the playground because today's guest didn't quit sustainability. She outgrew it. If you've ever felt successful on paper, but hollow inside, this conversation with my friend Lorraine Smith will change how you defined impact, wealth, and what it really means to serve life. So welcome to the Mindset Playground. Lorraine, how you doing today?
I'm so well, thanks, Luann, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Well, we're fellow Canadians, and I love that. So, of course, we have lots to discuss. So, in a nutshell, and then we'll back up. In a nutshell, what is it that you do?
Yeah. Well, first I'll just caution that I don't quite fit in a nutshell. But I'll step out of the nutshell for a moment, and then I'll land us. To make it easier for your listeners, I'm gonna say what I don't do, and then land on what that means today. So I used to be a mainstream business consultant focused on sustainability. That means helping big companies, usually publicly traded, often global, could be in banking, mining, food, manufacturing. I would help those companies think about their impacts, environmental and social, and how they could have the best possible outcomes. So I would help with the parts of their strategy that were around social and environmental impact. I did that for about 20 years. I'm from Toronto originally. So I was working for a firm in Toronto. I moved to New York City. I worked for a different firm in New York City, and I did that for a while. But I realized that it was not really having the desired effect. So being a sustainability consultant sounds good. It felt good in some ways. I worked with amazing people, terrific clients. I was paid well. I learned a lot. The missing part wasn't, a good job and all those fun things, but actually having positive impact. So when I realized that the work was not really having the stated effect that we were supposed to have to really make environmental and social positive change on the ground, I stepped away. And I'll skip over a number of things to say, what do I do now? Now I help individuals who may still be working in corporate, who, like me, they can't unsee the systemic issues of industry, socially, environmentally, basically holistically, that it is unfortunately extracting the value of life for profit. But they're not giving up. They still see ways in which business is both necessary and can be a true force for good, not just this kind of greenwashed sustainability. And I help them find their path to be part of a new economic paradigm where business truly serves life. So by creating value, by delivering products and services, companies actually enable life to thrive versus having these negative impacts and sort of writing them off as externalities or excusing them as part of the cost of doing business. So that's what
Oh,
I do.
wow.
Yeah, that's what I do now. I can say more about how I do that, but that's the work I'm doing now, is enabling individuals to create the shift to an economy that serves life.
Wow, that's amazing. So now going right back, is this what you always wanted to do? Did you study this in school? How did that all unfold?
Yeah, well, it turns out it's pretty tricky to study a new economic paradigm in school. In fact, part of the challenge, and I was slow to realize it, I was doing mainstream sustainability consulting for almost 20 years before I finally went, wait a minute, try as I might, this isn't changing. Very few people, more and more today have, but very few when I was getting deeper in this work, have ever even thought about that the economy could serve life. It's literally not a thought. It's not designed into how business works. Business is in the business of generating profit for shareholders, for owners, perhaps for employees, delivering a product and service, hopefully not doing too much damage along the way. Even that is sort of like a bonus if you're having those thoughts. But executives and board members are not trained, and there's very little schooling, including in business and commerce, around the social and environmental impacts, the real social and environmental impacts of business. So, no, I was not trained in this in school. But I would say from a very, very early age, I think, like many of us, I had a natural affinity for the natural world, for animals, for things that feel good versus things that are harmful and toxic. And then as a business person, more and more, I started to watch that red thread through the work and see that it wasn't going the way I would have liked. So I sort of cultivated that over many years.
Wow, that's amazing. So you decided, of course, now that you're working in this environment, or that when did you first start working in this environment?
Yeah, so well, I was hired into my first mainstream sustainability job in 2003. So basically a quarter century ago, that was mainstream consulting time. So yeah, 2003, 20. I don't want to count how many years ago now.
Yeah,
20 something years
carry the
ago.
one.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. A little bit of math.
Yeah. How true is that? Everything is now, I think, pre-COVID and post-COVID. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and then in between your brain is like oatmeal. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
So you once said that this is not, or that I'm not giving up. Looking back now, how do you recognize the difference between quitting something and choosing a deeper form of commitment to life?
Yeah, thanks, Luann. I appreciate that question because I quit my last job almost exactly 10 years ago, actually, in early 2016. And that's the last time I had a paycheck. It's the last time I had a secure income with an employer. And I didn't have a plan B. It's not like I'm not independently wealthy. I don't have a trust fund. I don't have a spouse backing me up. Um, I did not know how I would look after myself, but I knew that staying in the role that I was in was not aligned with what I believe needs to be true. And so I didn't just walk away. I tried quite hard. I made a number of different runs at shifting things. I was on the senior management team of the consulting firm I worked for. I had a year prior, I had had some pretty candid conversations with the co-leads of the firm to say, I'm quite concerned. I don't feel like we're really doing what it says on the tin. And I felt like I sort of went back in and tried again. And then there just came a point where I realized I'm not able to change what I believe needs to be changed in the role I'm in. And so I can either keep doing it and become more resentful and frustrated or go. So for me, quitting a job was actually the opposite of giving up. It was like, this is me not quitting the vision and doing my best to find my way forward. Although on paper, yes, I'm quitting my job. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So here comes the tough question. So, what had to change for you internally
Hmm.
before you could work that change externally?
Yeah, thanks. I love that question coming from you and the work you do around mindsets and really adjusting our own set before we move forward. you know, Honestly, I'm not proud of this answer, but the honest truth is I think internally things had to get bad enough that leaving was better than staying. I'm not that special. I'm not that courageous. Like in retrospect, people say, oh, that took such courage, and I'm like, it took me almost 20 years. Like it's not like I was there for 2 weeks and went, hang on a second here, this doesn't look right to me. I
Yeah.
kept trying to adjust and adjust. So what had to happen internally was a recognition that, I'm not crazy. This really is what's happening. The things I'm seeing are the things that are happening, and whether everybody would agree or not, it doesn't matter. I was experiencing this reality wasn't changing. The things I was trying to do to change it weren't changing them, and so at a certain point I had to accept this is it's not okay for me, and I'm allowed to choose, even though societal norms stay. You say I lived in the US at the time, so leaving a job, not having health care, not knowing how I was going to pay my rent, those are not trivial steps. I mean, it's not trivial anywhere to not have an income and not know how you're going to make it work. That's how that's how frustrated I was with the status quo. It was like I would rather go into free fall and not know what's going to happen than stay here. So
Wow.
that's what had to happen internally. Was it had to get so bad that I needed to change something and then trust that making that change would open up space for something better.
So, can I ask you, was there one particular moment or something in particular that happened where you knew you had to pivot? You knew you had to transform. Was there one event that you could describe to
Mhm.
us?
Yeah, first no, and then yes. So when I left my last paycheck 10 years ago, I left thinking, okay, I think I can do better outside of here. So the truth is, it wasn't that big of a risk. Like there was some precarity, there was a lot of unknowns, but I knew my work well enough that I was like, I bet I can find some clients, I can find some people to work with. And at the time, I was still moderately delusional, which tells me I'm probably always a little bit delusional. But at the time, I was delusional still in thinking if I'm independent, I can do work that will measure up to what I think needs to be done. If I get
Mm-hmm.
outside of an organ, because as a consultant, you're very bound to timesheets, to quarterly income, to a bunch of targets, to whatever the management and the owners have decided. And if that doesn't align with you, either too bad, like do it anyway, or go. But when I made the decision to work independently, I thought, well, now I can take on projects that will be more courageous, that will go outside of the norms. I will be able to do the work that I've been saying we need to do internally. So when I made that shift from the paycheck land to freelance land, I didn't have to um I didn't have to take that much of a risk. And in the end, the truth is I got bigger, better clients and I was paid better as an independent. However, so that was kind of like a slow shift. Let me frame this a little better. Stepping out of paycheck land was a sudden shift, but I kind of stepped into just more of the same kind of work, just at a more senior level, paid better, more independence. So it actually wasn't the change I thought I was making. It wasn't until about 5 years later, and then there was a moment. I can remember it like it's happening right now. It's October 21st, 2021. I've just completed a 5-day ultra marathon. So I've just run 255 kilometers, about 158 miles over 5 days. That's an average of a little more than a marathon a day.
Wow.
I did it because like just organized by me and had a really interesting time doing it. I did not do it with a particular mission, but what ended up happening was I now realize I was holding a question about how do I really live into my values? How do I really do extraordinary work? Because I'm kind of just doing more of the same, just paid better with more flexibility. Those aren't bad things in and of themselves, but they're not the thing I so courageously set out to do. And so when I came back from that run, and I can still picture I was putting my hand on my doorknob heading back into my apartment in Montreal where I lived at the time. And as I opened the door, I was like, oh, I'm done. I don't do that work anymore. And I walked through my door and it was like I walked into another world, even though it was the apartment I left 5 days before. And I knew in my body, I knew in my mind, I knew in my fingertips that would type and organize my calendar that I was done doing the work I'd been doing. I had 7 clients, freelance clients at the time. I fired them all right after that. There was a couple of projects that it didn't make sense to be like, I'm out, that would be sort of irresponsible, I guess you could say. So there was a little bit of a tapering off, but by August 2022, so a little less than a year later, I was done, done, done. Last invoice, 0 corporate work. And mostly I was done within weeks. So yes, there was a moment, and it was that moment coming back from that big long run.
Wow. That's amazing. And congratulations for that run in
Thank you.
itself.
It was
That's,
fun.
oh, I can't imagine. Maybe when I'm dreaming, but
Mm. Well,
anyway,
well, actually, can I build on that just for a moment?
absolutely.
Because I
Please
know you
do.
like to play with mindsets. You know, that run came about from a recognition that I would often hear in my corporate work. So by this point in 2021, I'm talking about business being in service of life. I'm talking about new economic paradigms. I'm connecting with people doing really groundbreaking work, looking at amazing business models, looking at different ownership structures. Like, I'm connecting with community. One of my favorite things about leaving the mainstream world was I could decide who I connected with. You know, I didn't have to get approval to bring certain stakeholders into a project, right? So I'm learning all kinds of amazing things at numerous levels of society and different sectors, and my mind is exploding with ideas. And yet, I'm not really clear on how my work brings these ideas, these big, paradigm shifts, so fun to say, but so hard to do. How do I bring that into companies or organizations where it's just not on the radar? And I had this awareness, this very embodied awareness, that I'm asking people to make radically different decisions about how they move resources around, how they build the strategies of their companies, their teams, whatever it is. But I'm just sitting over here going, you know what you need to do? You need to shift economic paradigms. You need to radically alter how you understand corporate design. Those are fun words to say, but it's a little bit ridiculous to propose without anything to back it up other than concepts and a vision. Meanwhile, I'd been a distance runner for a while. I'd run a couple marathons, and lots of people run, and it's not that exciting really. And I knew some ultra marathoners because I lived in New York for a while. I was part of a big distance running community, and I met some ultra marathoners. I thought, okay, well, I like to run, but that's crazy, right? Running hundreds of miles? No, I'm not that person. I just do marathons. That's already, so-called extreme. But the more I hung out with folks, the more I realized, like, wait a minute, they're just people. They're not a different species. In some cases, sure, they have different, skills or genetics or sponsors or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're just people. And so I had this awareness that the difference between somebody doing something truly extraordinary or not was mostly just the decision to do it. And the
Wow.
decision to invite that level of extraordinary into one's life and then see, oh, well, what's the difference between me and that? And what can I do about it? And there's some levels of extraordinary that, like, it doesn't matter how many times I invite them, they're not coming. I'm never going to be an Olympic level marathoner. Like, that ship sailed. I'm in my 50s then. I was I was already 50 when I did that ultra. There's some things that, like, it's not biologically or physiologically in the cards. But running an ultra marathon, it's actually very, very simple. It takes some planning, it takes some desire, it takes some support. But most able bodied people and many with disabilities, if they would choose, it is 100% doable. And I'm living proof because I'm really not that special. So, what I realized is if I'm asking people that I work with or work for to embody an extraordinary degree of change, but I'm going to sit around and do what I've always done, not only did it not seem fair, it didn't seem helpful. I was like, I don't even know what it means to do something extraordinary. And so that's how the
Wow.
ultra marathon idea came my way. And then when I did that 5-day run, I got to tell you, Luann, like, I didn't just go out the door one day and run for 5 days. There was a bunch of planning. It came together in some ways quite serendipitously, and in other ways very structured. And it was so fun. Like, so many things about it were just so fun. And I realized, like, oh, doing extraordinary things, it's about welcoming extraordinary and making it happen. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not really that special. I really am not. I'm not saying that to be modest. The difference is deciding to do something extraordinary and then looking around about what do I need to do to pull that into place and go for it. So that's where it came from, was really trying to embody the degree of paradigmatic shift that I was inviting my collaborators to take on, and then be like, I should probably try one of those myself.
No, that's great. And I love the fact that you're talking about this because, boy, does it ever fit into that category of mindset. Like, there has to be, I don't care how much you prepare. I don't care. You can have the perfect diet. You can have the perfect running time. You can have all of these things that are perfect, perfect, perfect. But if your mindset is not set up to do that marathon,
Yeah,
it isn't going to happen.
agreed.
Yes. And that's where I am. What I mean by that is that's where I am every day of life. If your mindset isn't set on something, it isn't going to happen.
Hmm.
It isn't. So I think it's important to put mindset maybe at the very top of that list.
Hmm.
And I'm sure you did, whether
Hmm.
you know it or not.
Oh no, absolutely. There's in industrial and sustainability conversations, we love to talk about systems thinking. It's like catnip for sustainability folks. And there's a lot of talk around leverage points. Where can you have the greatest impact, right? And so people often refer to Danella Meadows, sometimes talk about her as Dana Meadows, who, she's no longer with us, but over her years of systems theory, she published a number of very well-known pieces. And some of your listeners might be familiar with a piece that it's practically wallpaper in sustainability circles, called something like 12 places to intervene in a system, and it looks at the levels or the leverage points for where you can have the greatest impact. She then went on to rewrite it and turn it into 9, and her whole thing was like, you can't really be hierarchical about this. But the point is, at the top of the leverage points is worldview, or mindset, or paradigm. There's the different language gets used, and she's written it certain ways, but the point being, if you're in a worldview that says we can only do this, then the likelihood of you ever doing something beyond that is very, very slim. And it's literally why I've made a lot of my practice, especially in these last few years, be around allowing, or helping people allow themselves to recognize that an economy that works in service of life is a real idea. Like, I can remember very vividly, it's like a physical memory, conversations I've had in previous work when I was in the mainstream world, and I'd be doing an executive presentation or connecting with a board member of a client. So these are very senior executives. They've been there, done that in the corporate world. They've moved billions of dollars, tens of thousands of jobs. These are what you call senior business leaders. And somewhere in the conversation, I would work in, well, I kind of see that at some point we're going to be shifting so the economy really works in service of life. And so today, 2026, that phrase comes up a lot. And I certainly didn't coin the term. There's a lot of people talking in these terms now, so it's not that strange. But in 2016, using such terms, I can tell you what happened. They laughed. And it was a little bit of so here's how it would go. I would say something like, I kind of see that the economy is really here to serve life. And there'd be this like, well, we have to be realistic. And then it was almost as if, as they're saying those words, we have to be realistic, they could see the words, and they could feel in their own head, and then maybe even in their heart and their more whole self, like, wait a minute, why isn't it realistic that the economy would serve life? Like, what else is the economy here to do? Right? What is
Right.
it if not to serve us? And then you realize, oh, well, right now it's the other way around. We serve it. We work in service of our jobs. We work in service of growing GDP. We work in service of increasing profit. And so that worldview that says GDP growth is good, without asking where did, GDP just measures transactions, right? So if more cancer drugs were sold, GDP goes up, good. It's like, well, clearly we don't want more cancer, right? But GDP goes up. Military spending goes up, GDP goes up. Excellent. More guns. So we know that. And when the worldview that is deciding where money goes and where jobs go has never even contemplated that it could actually be the inverse, that it simply serves life, the likelihood of business being designed that way is almost, well, it doesn't happen. And so sharing that worldview, sharing that mindset, and watching the reactions, seeing the twinkle in the eye, or seeing that, like, the laugh, and then the like, oh, oh, like it's actually not funny. It's uncanny that it is causing a chuckle, you know? So all that to just triple underscore your mindset point. It's essential, and it can't be forced. I can't tell myself what's my mindset. I can notice it, and I can notice the worldviews of others and see, where are we? Are our spheres, at least bumping into one another? But forcing it doesn't work. And I think that's a big part of recognizing where we are now, industrially and societally speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great explanation. I love it.
Thank you.
And it just makes a lot of sense. So now let's shift to the metrics detox, right? So
Yeah.
now you're out of that environment and now you're in your own. Okay. So, how do you help people learn metric obsession and trust their own common sense again,
Yeah.
or unlearn, I should say,
Yeah.
metric obsession?
Yeah. This is a fun one because metrics, I think they do matter, right? Like, for instance, it's winter here in Canada, and the other day it was minus 40 Celsius, which is it was the minus 30 something Fahrenheit. Very, very, very cold. And that's a measurement, right? That number tells us something about what's going on. And as somebody who keeps a couple goats and they live outside, it was important for me to know what the temperature was. Yeah, they're like deer or, wild animals. They manage with the temperature, but their water, of course, was frozen solid, and a few other things I had to tend to. So metrics matter. It's when we serve the metrics as opposed to letting them serve us that we get confused. And that's back to that worldview. Like GDP, gross domestic product, it's a metric. It measures how much money has been transacted in a given economic realm. That's all it does. And so when we only observe metrics and then we seek to move them up and down, if we go back to Donella Meadows and her 12 places to intervene in a system, the lowest leverage point is the data or the metrics. So it's not nothing, but it's not the one that I would choose to drive purpose-led outcomes. If my purpose is anything other than more metrics, which my purpose is. My purpose is an economy that works in service of life. So there isn't one fix for this, but if people were to say to me, well, Lorraine, we have to know what we're talking about. Like, we need ways to measure and know what's going on. I say, sure. So there are some very basic grounded metrics that are missing. So, for example, climate change is a big topic in many sustainability circles. You can't be a sustainability consultant for a couple decades and not bump into conversations about climate. And I'm in a very awkward position here because I may be inadvertently grouped with climate deniers because I speak out quite actively, and I've written extensively about my concerns with corporate climate action, with net zero, with a bunch of programs that, when we look at them, they don't really work. So what's my concern there? Do I think companies shouldn't act on ecological wellness? No, not at all. But when you follow the money for a lot of corporate climate action on their net zero targets, when you follow green bonds and all these things in your ethical retirement funds, and they're aligned with climate smart investing, and I've followed the money. I have deep expertise in corporate disclosure. That's one of the areas I got very trained in my years of sustainability consulting. So I can take an investment portfolio, I can look at the holdings in the portfolio, and then I can, in some cases, you can't follow the money because the money is reinvested into other financial institutions, and it's a wash. You can't really follow the dollars. But in some cases, you can actually follow it to a real live company, McDonald's or Apple, or you can, and then you can look at that company's disclosures and see what's going on. And so a lot of the climate metrics are actually invested in companies that are, without question, in my opinion, and it's, I'd say, a fairly informed opinion on the topic, making things worse. Literally making things significantly worse, both on a climate
Mhm.
front and on a broader ecological and human wellness front. So those metrics, an obsession with that kind of metric is dangerous because it's skewing in ways that people don't realize that they're skewing. So what do you do instead? Let's say you're deeply concerned about climate. Let's say you are an executive who says, yeah, but we want to make sure our company has the best possible impact it can. Well, look around. Where are your impacts? And let's say you are headquartered in, I'm going to say, an urban center like Toronto, a city I know very well. What are the impacts of climate on Toronto? Well, it's quite abstract to talk about emissions and fossil fuel burning, but it's not abstract to talk about flooding and biodiversity loss. And when you look at flooding and biodiversity loss, you suddenly look at really simple things like, what are we paving over? Where are we removing trees?
Mhm.
How are we designing buildings so that they don't kill migratory species, birds, bats, and others, who in turn have a very direct relationship with insects and. So you suddenly see we're talking about very simple practical things that if we were to understand them and invest in them or not destroy them, we would have a very real positive impact on ecological outcomes. So the metric, you may want to run around collecting bird species data. You may want to run around looking at like shifts in floodplains if you really need some numbers. But begin with, what is the change you're trying to have? And if it's ecologically oriented, which ecological situation are you really trying to change? From what to what? And often with ecology, people can get, either they sort of gravitate to their pet projects, or they went to Costa Rica, so they're worried about cloud forest. But where most people can land pretty well when we guide them there is with people and human health. And so you can get into a lot of metrics there, but at the end of the day, you don't have to look too far to see real metabolic human health issues. A lot of very serious illnesses becoming more and more prevalent, and then more psychological challenges like loneliness epidemic, mental health challenges. And so if you want, you can play with metrics till the cows come home, but why not look at, hey, what are we doing that has an impact on human health? If we're a food company, for example, and let's say we're a big food company, you don't really have to spend a lot of time recognizing the impact of your food on human metabolism. The wrinkle we come to, and this is the most honest answer I can give, the challenge with metrics is most corporate folks will bump into a business model problem if they're really honest. Like, we're a food company, this is what we sell. So wait, you want us to look at the real impacts of the foods we sell on the soil and on the human body? But if we did that, we'd have to dot dot dot. And that's that, like,
Yeah.
that laughing at the economy serving life. It's like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Your whole business model is predicated on profiting from harm, which is awkward, and you don't really need a metric for that. You need a mindset that says, you know what? It's okay to talk about this. It's okay to not
Mhm.
have all the answers right now. It's okay to recognize that's how we were trained. That's literally what they taught us in business school. That's what our investors are asking us for. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. It's okay to recognize that. It's okay to talk about that. And then to say, what choices do we have now? What can we do differently? And that's where the metrics, like the letting go of metrics, not because they don't matter, but because they should not drive the ship. They should not be steering us. And then drop into, well, what does matter? What could steer us? And that's usually a lot more grounded and simple.
Well, I think that your point is so valid. And I too, even though I'm not into it as deeply as you are, but I too am concerned. I'm concerned about tomorrow and, what all this is going to bring. And my health, my health exactly is what I'm concerned about. And yeah, of course, my family and everybody around me, but when I think back, I'm at that age where now they're just starting to realize the impact of everything. So when I think back to the whole when I was younger, like in my teens and in my early 20s and 30s, right? And I think, wow, if they would have just taken a step back and said, well, wait a minute, let's see what's going to happen down
Mm-hmm.
the road if we do this today.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like when it
Yeah.
even comes to food and how everything is manufactured so differently than years ago, the GMOs and the dyes and the additives and for, to make these foods last longer, shelf life, whatever. But now I have to be concerned about health scares because back then I was told that's okay to eat.
Mm-hmm. That's
Like
right.
for a simple example, and I know I'm not trying to get political, but a simple example, I remember my mother when she was on a diet. Now my mother is passed. When she was on a diet, she was using saccharin,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going back quite a few years. But then saccharin became, sucralose and well,
Yeah.
it's Splenda and like all these things
Yeah.
that, cause all these problems. And people are walking around, they don't even realize that, you know, okay, it's okay to drink these diet sodas, but what's it going to do to you
Yeah.
in the
And
long run?
it's tricky, Luann, because I think there's a couple areas that make it really challenging, and I don't have answers for this. I do have questions and tools and ways that I support people on this, but I want to highlight two, I think, really important things just so people can be gentle with themselves because it can be pretty punishing stuff. I mean, the first is that most people don't have the bandwidth to be investigative journalists just to go grocery shopping, right? Like you can only do so much digging, label reading, and even the labels. There's a lot of politics in how labels are defined. Like just saying what the macro, proteins, sugars, etc., how that gets defined, measured, and explained, that's not neutral. So even that, if you had nothing but time to read labels, you're still being passed through a filter that industry and the regulatory bodies that are, you know, let's say collaborating with industry, they've already set us up for some confusion. So that in and of itself is already tricky. Like how much time and bandwidth and studying and debunking and rebunking do you want to do just to get some meals prepared for your family? I'd say that's already plenty for the vast majority of people. But let's say you're like, no, no, I got all the time in the world. I love this stuff. Hit me up. I'm ready. I'll read anything. I'll talk to anybody. I want to know more. Let me know. Okay, well, let's go over here behind door number infinity. Because behind door number infinity, even just the word sugar is a wonderful portal into many realities that once you start to see these, it's like Alice in Wonderland, but not the nicest places to wander because the very crop sugar has so much history connected to it, directly tied to some of the most brutal elements of the slave trade, land theft, extraction, oppression, erasure, white supremacy. I mean, the list it's terrifying. And that's just sugar. And it seems like, well, that was kind of a while ago. And it's like, it was kind of a while ago. But the way it's manifested actually is representative of that extractive, life serves the economy instead of the economy serving life. Because if the economy and its basic principles as they've been formed through the industrialized economy that we still live in today were about serving life, then the beautiful plant known as cane sugar, which is a perfectly lovely plant, would not have wielded the power that it does. And if you look at the sugar industry, if you look at the cotton industry, if you look at the tobacco industry, pick your plant and then follow it to its historical origins as an industrialized entity, it's a very dark and disturbing tale. So it isn't just like, oh man, the GMOs and the processing and the preservatives. It's like, no, no, no. The whole thing actually
Mhm.
is designed to maximize profit and maximize convenience and not nourish your body, keep our soils vibrant. Life is soil. Soil is life. Like they're very, very interconnected. You if you lose one, you start to lose the other, which is what's happening. So I don't say that to be depressing. I say that to acknowledge the scope of what we're dealing with. It's why, it's quite literally why I left sustainability. I was paid very well. I worked with really cool clients and amazing people. But having these kinds of conversations and saying, we got to look at where we're coming from here and why things are the way they are, not to beat ourselves up, not to torment ourselves, but to be really, really honest about the business models of these companies because they are built on very, very broken, shaky things that need to be understood and re examined for them to be truly sustainable. And if we did that, not only would there not be saccharin and all these weird artificial sweeteners, there wouldn't be a cane sugar industry. It would be an entirely different experience of sweet plants and how they make it into our industrialized food system. It would be radically different. So it was a little bit of a dark tirade, but just to give you a sense of how complex it is. It's not you. It's not that you're not buying the right products. It's that most of the food system does not provide us the right products, and it's not designed to do that. It's also highly profitable, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure. And if people do take the time to look into it, even just for a moment, it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of jaw dropping and makes you wonder what's going on. And out here where I live, we have a problem with the now I'm trying to think of the name of it, chemtrails.
Mm-hmm.
And one night I went out on my back porch and I looked up at the sky and it was just dusk. And there were so many chemtrails out here.
Hmm.
I took a picture of it because I couldn't believe it. And I was just kind of blown away by it.
Wow.
So it is real and it
Yeah.
happens when we aren't watching.
Yeah, by the way, just to put a happier note on this, I think there are very real things most people can do on the food front. Not
Hmm.
maybe not everybody, but actually, I haven't met anybody who couldn't when they tried, which is there are people producing food in truly um, stewardship oriented ways that by growing the food they grow, whether it's animals or plants, or usually it's a combination. That's where the real integrity is, but with biodiversity. Um, if you buy your food from people who are restoring soil and protecting biodiversity, you are investing in a way that protects or mitigates from the mainstream system. And in my opinion, that is the one way that consumers can make a real difference is find producers of real food, look them in the eye, ask them questions, not grilling them, but like, hey, how do you produce your food? And go easy on them because most of those folks are the hardest working, least well paid. That is not where the money is, but they're out there. And whether they're certified organic or not, whether they label themselves biodynamic or not, it's usually a few simple questions to understand their relationship with the land and the soil. And that is where, as much as I am able, I put I won't say 100%. It's not true. I still get a couple things in the grocery store. Very rare that I'm in a grocery store. And as much as possible, like 95% of my food dollars go into the pockets of people doing real work to keep the soil healthy, to protect as much biodiversity as possible. And then so that what goes into our bodies is as nourishing and safe as possible. So there are very real things
That's,
we can do.
yeah, that is so true. You know, when they say buy local and support your local farmers, and yes, and of course, I come from a family of farmers, so
Oh,
it's very important around here.
yeah, for sure.
And it's them who I've learned so much through. You
Cool.
know, I didn't realize how the crops have changed over the years and how processing the crops have changed over the years, but I'm learning. And I think that that's the important the important point right there is open-mindedness and do your research, do your homework.
Mhm.
It's there's a lot of information out there. And then we have people like you
Hmm.
who we can go to and ask questions. So this has been really great. Thank you so much, Lorraine. Before we go, I always ask my guests for three golden nuggets to leave the listeners with. So, what would your three golden nuggets be?
Yeah, thank you, Luann. I appreciate the invite. I guess I'd offer my kind of hack on staying motivated, if I may, because things can be hard, right? Like we're dealing with some really systemic challenges. It can be overwhelming. And yet I think there's so much beauty and elegance and real positive change up ahead that's ours to sort of choose and move towards. So I have three ways I like to think about motivation to stay in the game. And I guess the first one is just around that inviting extraordinary into the room. Like just welcome the idea that it's possible. People do extraordinary things all the time. There's a lot of real potential up ahead. So just inviting extraordinary as an idea, an option. I like to think of extraordinary as like a dinner guest. Like I better set the table because if they show up and open the door and I'm not ready, they're going to go to the next door or they're just going to walk away. So just staying really present to the invitation of bigger, better things happening that are part of my world. That's the first one. But the second one, this one's very counterintuitive, but this golden nugget has served me over and over, and I'd really encourage your listeners to take it too, which is to welcome contradictory perspective, to welcome different ways of seeing, understanding, experiencing, incentivizing, sharing knowledge that can sound like wade into unsafe, polarizing territory. Go where you can and don't put yourself at risk. But more and more I find when I see or hear polarization, I'm very attracted to both poles. And what I find is very meaningful ideas or even grievances in both. And letting those come towards me softens my gaze. Instead of getting really hardened around like, oh, those people, or why doesn't everybody just, it just softens my gaze, I lower my arm, as in I put down my arms. So I really encourage people to step wide of your tribe and in whatever ways you can really listen to diverse things that even seem very, very contradictory. It's so empowering. It's so motivating. And then the third nugget on this one is to, I say imitate. I'll imitate is a straight enough word, but imitate folks or even non-humans that are doing way bigger, better things than you. So, for example, migratory birds, they go thousands of kilometers. They have no idea what's up ahead, right? Big, tall buildings have been built. A forest has been mowed down since the last time they flew by there. All kinds of changes are up ahead, but they're going to go anyway. And people, there's such extraordinary people doing incredible work, creating beautiful things. So seek out those mentors, whether you can talk with them live and gain real insights from them or simply observe their behaviors. And then ask yourself, what about that behavior or that guidance or that example can I imitate? Because it turns out probably more than you think. So invite extraordinary, dip into terrain that looks uncomfortable and contradictory, and seek out and copy mentors who are doing amazing things beyond your wildest imagination.
Wow. Those are some great nuggets.
Thank you.
And I hope that people will take those to heart and really think about what you said because they're very important. And
Thank
I
you.
think that anyone who's looking for living a better life from the inside out would be smart to listen to what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Luann. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. So thank you so much for stopping by the Mindset Playground and playing with me here today. And I look forward to doing it again one day.
I'd love that. Thank you.
This has been the Mindset Playground with host Luann Hunt. Tune in each week for another daily dose of positivity right here on the Mindset Playground.